All right. Hey there, May Blythe here. All right, so I uploaded a video. I'm probably gonna upload this first. I made a video and it was about coloring the way I used to in high school because it's hard to just throw someone in and say, hey, this is how you color when it's something kind of complex. So this is way easier than what I do now. And it's a really good base because even if it doesn't teach you exactly where you're supposed to put shadows, it does teach you how to make it look more advanced than dodge and burn. Anyway, so I got two shapes here. This one I'm going to kind of shade like skin, and the bottom pink one if you can't see my cursor going around. And the top one I'm going to shade like bar. Alright, so for the bar one, it's going to be like kind of shiny like metal. Alright, for the one on the top, I picked a base color. You should always pick a base color because if you pick a base color, you can add highlights and shadows. On the bottom one, I already picked a highlight color. It's not a good idea to use pure white as a highlight, so this is kind of like the highest color it's going to be. For the bar, since it's going to be so shiny, you're going to want to put in really light highlights that aren't as blended. For the bottom one, it's going to be more diffused, so you'll want to put in less highlights because, if people walked around with super shiny skin, we'd all get blinded. Okay, so for the first one, you start off with your lightest shadow. So we want to move this so it's more saturated, and to give it a little more variety, I'm making it a little more blue. Alright, so first you just want to add in the lightest shadow, and if you were cell shading, you would need these to be equal, you need them to be perfect. But if you're just starting with your tablet, like, it's totally understandable if it's really hard for you to get perfect straight lines. And because you're going to be blending it, it's even less important. Anyway, so once you're kind of happy with the placement of your lightest shadow, you move on to your darker shadow. And with things like metal, leather, the shadows are way less blended. Then you just got to go even darker, make it a little bluer to kind of like emphasize that it's darker. Alright, maybe just a touch of really dark to be like, bam. Anyway, now you want to do your highlights, and you just kind of want to put those down there. Gray, not white, don't do white. Alright, now blur. This one, you're gonna want a smaller blur so that you get a little more, you know, what's the thing? Control. Alright. Now, you just blend it. The more contrast your shadows have, the better it'll look, depending on what look you're going for. Because your art teacher will tell you you're doing it wrong if you only have a certain type of shadows. And if you're new to this, it's probably better that you do all of your shadows in a separate layer so that they don't get muddy. Because these are muddy. Yeah, this looks more like an ocean than what I was trying to go for. So here's one way to color. Here's another way to do this. All right. So color. Let's do it with more vibrancy. More contrast, that's what I meant. All right. So you put down the first thing. And then you'll put down the second thing, add some blue. Wait. Put a new layer so that it'll get less muddy. Put in the second layer. Put in the third layer. And then individually blur. And if you're doing it like this, it's way easier. Alright, so now you just go like this, blur it. Go like this, blur it. Then you go like this, you blur it. The cleaner your lines are, the more it'll be. It'll look less like an ocean and more like whatever you want it to be. Alright, and then you want to do highlights. Pick this, make it go here, maybe make it, and then you just go wee, wee. You want the highlights to be mainly confined to the base colors, and you don't really want it to blend in with the other colors, but whatevs. Alright, so then you got your highlights down, and because you want it to look really shiny, you kind of just want to go like this, and this, and really only blur the edges so that you have at least the middle is just plain shiny. Alright, and there. You have a kind of bar looking thing. Now the second method is going to be a lot easier because you're not going to really need all of this fine detail going sideways. Okay, we're going to treat the center as the highlight. Now, let's just darken this a bit and put in the first shadow. And you want to have just in the center, just highlight. Now, blur this. And in the center, you still got that highlight. And maybe, and depending on where it is, you might want to blur it so that it's a circle. Alright, then you put the second layer, and you put it darker. And notice that when I'm making it darker, I'm not just going down. I'm not just going down on the color wheel, I'm going diagonal. Hopefully you can see that. Alright, then you want to put in your second shadow. And you want to blur that. You want to avoid you know, like blurring this shadow until where the shadow before it's blurred. And really, you just keep doing this. Like, it's really a case by case basis. How exact do you pick what shadows are going to be where and all that stuff? You can think of this as kind of like doing a gradient, but when you're doing this outside of a box, it's going to have to fit with the curvature of the surface you're working with. All right, now let's just do this. Blur. And maybe add in a little highlight. You can't even see it because it's so bright. Alright, so now this doesn't actually look too grand, that one down there. So what do? We blur it out more. And this is a silly and repetitive process that you just gotta keep doing. If it doesn't look right, you gotta just keep doing it until it does look right. Which seems like really common sense, but I was just staring at him like, why does it look so bad? Because I didn't do it until it looked great. Art is hard. And if you're just keep trying and trying and you can't figure out why it's not working, it's not because you're not doing good. It's just because when you're staring at a piece of art for like hours on end, you kind of get blind to the pieces. You have to step back a few feet, or in Sai's case, press the minimize button, and you just need to take a break. But anyway, so this was just a quick little thing showing how I always colored before I got really serious and into it and really started trying my hardest. But I'm really lost. I have no idea what I'm doing even now. So the bottom one looks pretty bad. I'm gonna just admit that. And there are tons of things you could do to fix it, but at the core, this is how I used to color. And how big the highlight is, how much variation is in the color is all dependent on what kind of fabric it is, what kind of surface it is. If it's skin, are they oily? Is their face dry? You know, it's just a lot of variables. Art is really hard, even for someone who's been trying their hardest for years. So don't feel bad if it doesn't look good the first time. Don't feel bad if it doesn't look good the 27th time. Just keep on arting, and when in doubt, find DA tutorials. They might set you on the wrong course by miles and miles. They have a lot of bad tutorials, but there are good ones. And even if you pick a bad one to base your style off of, it'll encourage you to keep going, because you'll have your style. You'll have the way that's easy for you. You know? So anyway, I hope this helped someone, anyone. Yeah.